Good afternoon, everybody. I want to talk today about our conditions. We've got our offer accepted, and now it's time for us to fulfill our conditions. Typically, in most of our offers, we have condition on financing, home inspection, and insurance. So this is the point where we send the offer off to your financial institution, let them start working on finishing up the financing. This may entail an appraisal, which could take 3 or 4 days depending on the availability of the appraisers. Once we know that you've got your financing in place, the next step we're going to probably work on is getting the home inspection ordered and setting up at least 2.5 to 3.5 hours aside to get together with the home inspector. Typically with the home inspection, it's always best for you as the buyer to be there. You want to be there so you can listen to the home inspector point out each of the deficiencies in the property. If there's anything major, he can explain to you what exactly is the major problem and how it can be rectified. If it's just some minor issues, he'll probably give you an idea of what it's going to take to fix those. Plus, he'll probably give you prices on what it's going to cost to repair everything in the home inspection report. Once we've got our home inspection report, you're going to want to contact your insurance company. The thing is, the insurance companies may give you a quote right over the phone. They may not want to give you a final quote until about a week before closing. So if that's the case, then as long as you know that they're willing to insure the home, then you're good to remove that condition. The other things, if it's a rural property, we're going to want to dig into the well. If there is a well report available, we want to try and get our hands on that. Typically, there isn't well reports, so we'll still continue to do a water sample. The water sample we can either take to a private lab or it can be sent to the local health unit. The health unit will take 4 or 5 days to get the water test back. The lab, we can get the test results back the next day. Once the water test comes back, we want to make sure that it's 0, which would mean 0 E. coli, 0 bacteria. As far as the 0 and the E. coli, you always want to have a 0 there. With bacteria, it can go up to the number of 5, and the banks are still fine with that. But the closer to 0, the better off that we are. We'll help with the water test as well. It's a very simple procedure, and it's good to get that done right even at the time of the home inspection. The next thing we may want to worry about is the septic. So typically, whenever the property is on a septic, depending on the location, we want to get a copy of the most recent septic inspection. If it's been more than a couple of years, it's very well worthwhile asking the seller if they'll do a new inspection and have the septic tank pumped out. If we can get them to do that, the septic inspector will come in, he'll pump the septic so that it's nice and clean, and he'll take a look at the baffles and the tees and make sure that the septic is still in good working order and the tank doesn't have any cracks or the lids are still in good shape. If there is anything that comes out of that, then we would ask the seller of the property to remedy that, because they're really going to have a difficult time selling the property to anybody if they don't look at remedying any deficiencies in the septic. The other conditions that we may have is if you already own a home and we have to sell your house, then we're going to want to put a condition in the offer conditional upon you selling your property. We're going to probably give ourselves at least 30 to 45 days to have the opportunity to get the pictures taken, have our brochures made, have your property ready to show, which typically takes 4 days to a week. Once we get your property on the market, we want to get it exposed to as many buyers as we possibly can in the shortest period of time. That's when we'll get into the listing process. The only downfall with having an offer conditional upon you selling your property is in a busy market, if there are other offers that are coming in, you may lose out on the particular property that you want. You may end up paying a few $1,000s more for the property if you get into a bidding war and you want to be the winning bidder. Because we have to put in what's called an escape clause with that offer. And the escape clause would basically say that the seller could continue to offer the property for sale. If at any time the seller receives another offer that's satisfactory to them, they'll come back to us and give us notice, which could be 24 hours, could be 48 hours, could be 72 hours, or it could even be 2 or 3 full banking days. It's whatever we try and negotiate in the offer. When I'm working for you, I always want to make sure that I try and put the longest period possible, so it gives us the most amount of time to remove our conditions. Because if we're in the process of negotiating an offer on your house, we definitely want to make sure that we have time to get those conditions fulfilled, so we can, remove the condition on the house that you want to purchase without putting yourselves in any jeopardy. There's always going to be other little conditions that may come up in the process of negotiating an offer. There could be light fixtures removed, where we want to make sure that new light fixtures are going to be put in a good and workmanlike manner, where if the seller has to repair any damage from the home that we noticed in the home inspection, we may want to go back in and revisit the property to make sure that the work that they did was done in a good and workmanlike manner and completed the way that, at least to our expectations and to the home inspector's expectations. Other conditions could be environmental issues. If there's something on the property that we see that gives us some concern, there could be an oil tank on the property, and we want to make sure that the oil tank is up to today's standards and that the oil company will continue to fill the oil tank, because you don't want to move into a property and find out the following winter that the oil companies won't put oil into your oil tank until you purchase a new one, because that's going to be, probably in the neighborhood of $1,500. So there are certain houses where we're going to run into unique situations where we have to add additional conditions, and I could really talk about that all day, but every situation is a little bit different. I just really wanted to follow through on the main conditions that we run into on a regular basis. And the other terms that we're going to want to put into our offer, again, are going back through and having an opportunity to visit the property. If you want to bring a friend through, or a family member through, children through, a contractor, you want to have that opportunity to be able to get back in and revisit the property. You also want to make sure that there hasn't been any water damage coming in through the roof or into the basement. If we put a condition in there that they haven't had any of those issues, then you're getting their word that we haven't, the seller's word that we haven't had those issues. If they come back to us and say, well, 4 years ago we did have water coming through the roof, but we reshingled the house 3 years ago, so now that it hasn't been an issue since that time, then we can evaluate that and say, that makes sense. And if the shingles were bad, that could happen. But now that there's new shingles, we don't need to worry about that anymore. But at least if we get that acknowledgement from the seller, it lets you make the decision as to whether or not you want to proceed with the offer or not proceed with the offer. The other thing we're going to always make sure we have in an offer is that the seller removes all garbage and debris from inside the house, around the house, and any outbuildings. And I always advise, if we do the walkthrough 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, there still may be garbage and debris on the property. But if that's the case, it's always good to maybe take a drive by the day before closing or the day of closing in the morning and make sure that the yard looks like it's cleaned up and things are straightened around the way that you expect them to be. If there is a lot of garbage and there is a lot of debris on the property, that's when we need to talk to the lawyers and maybe look at holding back a little bit of money on the closing date to make sure that all that was cleaned up. Or if they allow us, go back in and do another preview just to make sure that everything has been removed from the property. That pretty much clears up the conditions that we're going to run into in most cases in an agreement of purchase and sale. If there are any questions or there's anything that you think I've missed or you would like more clarification on something, please feel free to give me a call, 705-527-7877. And you can also speak to any of my agents. They're all very well versed on this. We do training every week to keep ourselves up to date on all these terms and all these conditions, and to make sure that our buyers are completely protected at all times. I wish you guys the greatest of weekend. God bless, and take care. Thank you.